Career satisfaction from within. Find and follow your true calling or get more satisfaction from what you do by Christopher R. Edgar. Chapter 1. You are not your career. When asked who we are or what we do, most of us usually respond with the job titles. We say, I am a lawyer, I am an electrician, I am a professor, and so forth. People who lose their jobs or retire often report feeling like they don't know who they are anymore, or they have lost a part of themselves. Children learn to respond with a job description when asked what they want to be when they grow up. All these habits reflect our tendency to identify with our careers or to see them as a part of who we are. To many of us, it's as if our careers are part of our bodies and we would be physically hurt or destroyed if our careers changed or ended. Unfortunately, identifying with our careers lends to bring us suffering. When we treat our jobs like they are part of our being, we place ourselves in a constant state of fear. We fear that we won't do our jobs well enough and that they'll disappear and leave us incomplete. We fear changing jobs or starting our own businesses because doing so would mean giving up our identities. We become unable to relax or enjoy vacations as we feel useless when we spend time away from the office. As psychologist Gary Buffon succinctly puts this point in The Might of Tomorrow, 7 Essential Keys for Living the Life You Want Today, we often confuse who we are with what we do and own. As a result, we become inordinately stressed by threats to our career, bank account, and any number of external attributes, believing I am my career or I am my physical appearance. When I voice the idea that identifying with your career can prove harmful, many people are skeptical. They believe that if they weren't so firmly attached to their careers, they wouldn't achieve as much success. However, relatively few people have actually had the experience of feeling whole and accepting themselves no matter what. They simply assume they must be better off with their anxieties. In fact, there are several reasons why becoming less identified with your career actually increases your productivity and enjoyment of what you do. You become able to take worthwhile risks. We all know people who, while they constantly complain about their jobs, make no effort to explore their other options. This is because, as much as they dislike their jobs, they're identified with their career roles and the money, status, and other perks their job afford them. They fear that if they took another position, they might lose their jobs or fail to perform as well, and they would lose the benefits to which they are so attached. Separating your identity from your career empowers you to take action if you are unhappy with your situation. As I said earlier, this is also relevant in the context of starting a business, as feeling complete in yourself, no matter what, is essential in case your business fails or falls on difficult times. You worry less often. Identifying with our careers brings us constant worry, and worrying renders us unproductive. Most of us are undoubtedly familiar with the experience of waking up at 3 am in a cold sweat, wondering whether we did some project adequately or whether the boss approves of us. We don't accomplish anything in this frazzled and half awake state other than losing sleep and harming our performance the next day. Even when we are at work, we spend long periods obsessing about how we are perceived here and whether we are doing a good enough job. Ironically, when we become lost in anxious thoughts about how our careers are going, we are unable to concentrate on work we are actually there to do. You become easier to relate to. Identifying with our careers makes us unpleasant to be around. We have all met people at social events who just can't seem to stop talking about their work. Whether they obsess about the technical details of what they do, the money and prestige their jobs get them, the social dynamics of their workplace, and something else. These people have become so deeply attached to their careers occupy all their thoughts, and they have lost sight of other dimensions of the humanity. Their approval to themselves, and they believe others' approval of them entirely depend on the prestige of their careers, their job performance, and how well liked they are in the workplace. Intuitively, I believe most of us recognize that people are more than what they do for a living, and this understanding has us feel uncomfortable around people who are this career obsessed and out of touch with themselves. You take more pleasure in what you do. If you think of your career as if it were part of you, that doesn't necessarily mean you love it. In fact, the opposite is often true. Because identification creates a constant fear of loss, people who are identified with their jobs see work as a source of anxiety and frustration. Their work progresses slowly and painfully as their anxiety has them second guessing everything they do and obsessing about others' possible reactions. As most people in our culture are so attached to their careers, it's no surprise we rarely meet someone who is genuinely passionate about what they are doing for a living. We can see this most clearly when we think of the difference between how we experience activities we call work and those we see as play. When we see ourselves as playing, we feel free to experiment with things we haven't tried before, and we don't take it personally when something doesn't go the way we would like. By contrast, when we begin thinking of an activity as work, it means we are attached to the outcome of what we do. We start worrying about messing up, displeasing those we are working with, and so on. When something becomes work, we start having to drag ourselves off out of bed to go do it. Of course, it's true that every career, as much joy as we might find in it, has its less thrilling tasks like paying bills and organizing your workspace. But even these things, if they are done in the service of an activity you see as play, can become enjoyable or at least tolerable. I'm reminded of this each time I see my friend, who is a sculptor, organizing and cleaning up her studio. She seems to take as much pleasure in it as she does in the act of sculpting itself, because she does it in the service of something she is passionate about. As Buddhist teacher Daises Taitaro Suzuki puts it, to the person who enjoys perfect freedom of spirit and is always acting in accord with his self nature, his work is play. How do we end our identification with our careers? One way, as this exercises prescribe, is to allow yourself to fully experience the work related fears that plague you. Just let the unpleasant sensations your anxieties create in your body be there without judging or pushing them away. If you are constantly worrying about your co workers outdoing you, for instance, imagine them actually performing better than you and let yourself fully feel the emotions that image evokes. You'll notice that when you keep breathing and focusing on your fear for a little while, it passes away, leaving you calm and unharmed. If it arises again, it feels weaker and more manageable. Once you grasp that you can face your career related fears without being hurt or destroyed, those fears and your identification with your work begin to fade. Your fears aren't part of who you are, they're just temporary experiences you have. Exercise 1, Dissolve your self distraction. This exercise helps you fully experience the fears that have held you back from finding career satisfaction or making the transition you want. Instead of simply allowing our fears to be, most of us find ways to numb and distract ourselves from them, working excessively, watching TV, using drugs and alcohol, and so on. This exercise involves, at least temporarily, removing those distractions from your life. To understand and transcend your fears, you need to get acquainted with them, and you can't do that unless you stop diverting your attention from what you're really feeling. As Mark Linton O'Meara explains in The Feeling Soul, a roadmap to healing and living, just as a doctor becomes quiet and uses stethoscope to listen to a patient's heart, so too must you quiet the things around you, focus and listen on what is going on inside. Doing this allows you to obtain the information you need to gain the awareness required to create a shift in your feelings, behaviors, and thoughts. Still others report feeling bored. But what is boredom really? I tend to think it's just another word for all the feelings and sensations we avoid experiencing through the various distractions we bring into our lives. If boredom were just a matter of having nothing to do or not enough stimulus, why do people experience it as almost physically painful? And why are they willing to do nearly anything, even self destructive things like abusing drugs, to get rid of it? A psychologist, Bruno Bettelheim, wrote, "Boredom is a sign of too many feelings, too deep and too hard to summon to the surface." Once you have eliminated your distractions, notice the sensations that emerge. Notice the places in your body and become tight or otherwise uncomfortable, and the emotions that arise. Observe how hungry, almost desperate, you are to bring your divergence back into your life. Consider the possibility that what you are experiencing has actually resided in the background all the time, You have just grown accustomed to diverting your attention from those feelings. This exercise may seem irritating or stressful, but ultimately, the only way to transcend your fears is to fully allow yourself to feel them. Consciously or otherwise, you design the distractions in your life to avoid feeling your anxieties, and those distractions need to be at least temporarily discarded if you want to come to terms with what's actually going on for you. One benefit you may get immediately is that without your distractions, you start seeing and appreciating details of the world you may not have noticed before. If you don't have loud music on all the time, for example, you may hear and enjoy the bird songs outside. If you aren't fidgeting, you may connect more deeply with the ever changing sensations in your body. If the sensations you feel when you stop all your distracting activities seem like too much to bear, you can do this exercise gradually by removing one distraction from your life per day. For instance, on the first day you might leave the car radio off as you drive to work. On the next, you might refrain from watching TV. On the next, you might not drink any alcohol and so on. This method also makes it easier for you to monitor yourself and ensure you don't find yourself automatically reverting to the distractions you're trying to stop. Once you're fully in touch with your fears, you can begin working on dissolving and transcending them. Exercise 2. Simplify your fears. Often, the number of potential problems facing us when we are considering changing careers or starting a business can seem overwhelming. The people in our new environment might not like us. We might find we are not as motivated as we thought. We might not generate enough income, and so on. We usually feel the same way about our work situations, even if we aren't considering a transition. For example, we might be concerned that our superiors think we are strange, our colleagues are gossiping about us, our clients will switch to a competitor, and so forth. We start experiencing our fears and worries as less threatening when we recognize that ultimately they all stem from the same source, the fear of annihilation or non being. At the root of each anxiety is the belief that if the thing we fear come to pass, we would be hurt or destroyed. When we understand this, the number of fears facing us doesn't seem so vast. In reality, there's only one. As Dr. Richard Moss puts it in the mandala of being, fear of annihilation is at the root of perpetual sense of insufficiency and insecurity that drives our unrelenting quest for survival, long after our basic survival needs have been assured and far exceeded. If we can come to terms with that basic fear, we can live from a calm, empowered place even in a stressful work environment. There are two methods used to help people experience on a physical level the fact that the fear of non-existence underlies all our smaller worries and concerns. First, focus your attention on one of your standard anxieties. Perhaps it's a concern that your boss secretly wishes you stay later at the office, that you won't get a project done on time, that your colleagues dislike you, and so forth. Ask yourself what would happen if your fear come true. For example, if you're afraid your employees don't see you as an effective leader, ask yourself what would happen if they actually came up to you and told you as much. Listen for the first answer that comes to mind, regardless of how exaggerated or irrational it may sound. Now take the consequence you imagined, maybe for instance, that your employees don't respect you, and ask yourself what in turn would happen if that event came about. In other words, using this example, what would happen if your employees actually didn't respect you? If, for instance, the answer that occurs to you is, I'd be worthless, ask what would happen if you were worthless. Continue this process until you get to a point where you can't think of another consequence. When you arrive at the deepest reason why the anxiety you're having troubles you. Most people I've done this exercise with ultimately conclude that there would be nothing, nobody, worthless, dead, or similar words reflecting a sense that they would disappear or cease to exist if their fear were realized. After they reach this point, they can't think of any further events that would occur if their anxiety came true. More importantly, when they repeat the same process with another of their anxieties, they tend to arrive at the same result. No matter which of their many worries they are thinking about, they find each of them stems from the fear of annihilation. Try repeating this process with a few of your own fears and see if you get similar results. For instance, if you discover that your concern that your co-workers see you as ineffective is rooted in the fear of non-existence, look at another career-related worry. Perhaps the fear that you won't get promoted this year. If you dig to the root of this worry, you'll likely find the fear of non-being lurking there as well. When you do this exercise regularly, you'll notice that the overwhelming quality your fears used to have begins to disappear. What you thought was your limitless legion of anxieties was in fact only one. The second approach involves noticing the sensations that arise in your body when you hold your fears in your awareness. To do this exercise, simply bring one of your anxieties to mind as you would using the first method and observe how your body feels. Perhaps you feel a tightening in your muscles, a shallowness in your breathing, a warmth in your forehead, or something else. Once you have a clear idea of the sensations that arise when you focus on the anxiety, bring another anxiety to mind and notice the sensation it creates. In my experience, most people who do this exercise report experiencing similar sensations, no matter what their specific anxiety. This illustrates on a more visceral level the common source of the mask of seemingly unrelated worries that afflict most of us. We can also see the fear of non-being in the dramatic ways people usually talk about the possible consequences of a career change or a setback in their jobs. For instance, when layoffs occur at a company, people often call the remaining workers survivors. Similarly, people often say, "I need my job to survive." Of course, while it's true that you need some source of income to pay for food and shelter, there are many different ways to make a living. The particular job you have right now isn't the only one. People tend to exaggerate the consequences of a job or career change as if it really could mean their extinction, and at bottom, their extinction is what they really fear. Once we recognize the fear of annihilation at the root of our anxieties, what comes next? As we know from the amount of spiritual and philosophical thought out there are many approaches to handling the fear of nothingness. Some, including me, believe that annihilation as we usually think of it is impossible. Because I, at the deepest level, consist of the same energy that comprises the rest of the universe. I cannot be destroyed. When my physical body dissolves, I'll remain part of that changeless energy field. Even if you aren't yet sure how to address your fear of nothingness, just knowing that this fear underlies all your anxieties brings a simplicity and clarity to your thinking. However, our fears aren't actually part of who we are. They're just experiences we have from time to time. For instance, when I see a movie, I may laugh or get scared during the movie, but when the movie is over or shortly afterward, those feelings disappear. I won't think of the movie or the emotions I felt during it as a part of who I am, or as an experience I will have to repeat for the rest of my life. Once you recognize that your fear is just a transient, short lived experience, the prospect of taking risk, asking for what you want, and otherwise facing that fear no longer seems so threatening. This exercise helps you become aware on a physical level that your fears aren't part of who you are. Start by finding a comfortable place where you can sit alone and remain undistracted. Keep your eyes open and breathe steadily and deeply. Now turn your attention to the fears that have stopped you from achieving satisfaction in your career or making the changes you want. Allow any thoughts and feelings to simply occur without judging them, pushing them away, or turning to some activity to take your mind off them. Notice the sensations arising in your body when you bring your fears to mind. When I do this exercise with people, some say, "I don't feel anything in my body, I'm just afraid." But there must be some sensations that tell you that you are experiencing anxiety, otherwise, you wouldn't know the anxiety was there. For example, is there tension or pain in some part of your body? Where is it? Does your breathing become constricted? Do you feel warmer or colder anywhere? Does your mouth become dry? Do you start to sweat? As you make these observations, maintain your breathing and focus. Once you have fully experienced the physical sensation of your fear, allow the fear to gently pass away. Let it subside into the space, the emptiness from which it came. Just as each breath of air into your lungs is followed by an exhale, so too do fear and other emotions enter the flow out of you. Observe that even though the sensations of the anxiety are gone, you are still there. Allowing yourself to experience the anxiety didn't destroy or change what you are. You are still a whole and complete being. This exercise helps you experience firsthand the sense of separation from your fears I talked about earlier. When we allow our fears to run its course inside us and notice us remain unharmed after it's gone, we feel empowered to act even if it resurfaces. As Dr. Barbara Miller Fishman writes in Emotional Healing through Mindfulness Meditation, meditative tool for probing experience allows us to watch how thoughts arise and then fade, how powerful emotions such as anger and fear emerge and then subside. In this way, we learn about the impermanence of experience. We can also understand this exercise in terms of the theory in somatic psychology that when we are suffering some kind of trauma, we usually tighten our muscles and hold our breath to ward off the intense feelings associated with the experience. Unfortunately, this causes the emotions to become locked into our bodies and makes us continually re experience them. The way to release these trapped emotions, some say, is to experience them while breathing deeply and allowing our bodies to move in whatever way they need, whether through crying, jumping up and down, or something else. As psychologist Susan Apushan describes this approach in body mind psychotherapy, through very slowly allowing these traumatic physical responses to unwind and sequence out through the body through our breath and our movement, we are transforming them into the healthy, effective responses that could not occur originally. Similarly, the exercise I described has us breathe through our fear until it dissipates and is no longer trapped in our bodies. Exercise 4. Appreciate your other dimensions. Most people reading this, I suspect, work in sedentary jobs that focus on generating words and numbers, computer programmers, executives, accountants, and so forth. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. After all, at this very moment, I'm sitting at my computer typing words. However, we spend so much time seated and engaged in mental activity that we sometimes forget there are other dimensions of who we are beyond our minds. As Ramdas writes in Be Here Now, you have at this moment many constellations of thoughts, each composing an identity. Usually, you are lost into that identity when it dominates your thoughts. At the moment of being a mother, a father, a student, or a lover, and the rest are lost. So too, do we lose sight of how varied and multifaceted we are when we become identified with what we do for work. However, a more targeted approach involves simply sitting by yourself in silence and holding your attention on areas of your body you normally take for granted. Simply notice the sensations that arise in those areas, whether you feel warmth, tingling, itching, or something else. Examples of this taken for granted areas include the soles of the feet, the pelvis, and the back. Some spiritual teachers prescribe a similar exercise they call feeling the inner body or feeling your body from the inside. That has you scan your awareness over each part of your body and notice how it feels from within. As Eckhart Tolle writes in The Power of Now, one way to overcome the perpetually worried state most of us find ourselves in is simply to take the focus of your attention away from thinking and direct it into the body, where being can be felt in the first instance as the invisible energy field that gives life to what you perceive as the physical body. I have found in doing these exercises with myself and others that merely feeling the sensations in more of your body can strengthen your feeling of wholeness. When we lose touch with the feelings in an areas of our body, it's no surprise that we develop the nagging sense that we are incomplete. If I can't feel my back or my legs most of the time, for instance, I'm likely to get the sense that some part of me is missing. Often we mistakenly believe the only way we can feel complete is to get and accomplish something in the world. In fact, what we really want is to experience more physical sensation. Thus, reconnecting with our bodies can make a big difference in how complete and adequate we feel. If the idea that you might want to experience more sensation in your body sounds strange to you, try seeing it from this perspective. Everything we do in life is, at root, an effort to feel or avoid feeling certain sensations. For example, we don't make money for money's sake. We seek money because of the feelings we think it will bring us, whether it's safety, pleasure, dominance, or something else. Because focusing our attention on our bodies make us more receptive to sensation, body awareness, more than anything we achieve in the world, can help us have the kind of experiences we are seeking. Exercise 5. Transcend your boundaries. I believe many of our fears, career related and otherwise, stem from a misperception of ourselves as small and weak. We see ourselves as too fragile to deal with setbacks in our businesses, confrontations with people, upcoming deadlines, and so on, and this has us hold ourselves back or worry compulsively. One way to overcome this feeling of frailty is to feel on a physical level the fact that you are much greater and stronger than you may think. What I'll recommend here will sound the most metaphysical of any exercise I have talked about so far, but if you bear with me, I think you'll be surprised at the results. We tend to assume we are our bodies. If asked to point to themselves, many people point to their chest or head and say, "This is me." When we reflect on this, we recognize that we don't think of ourselves as our bodies. We experience ourselves as the controllers of our body, as if our bodies were cars and we were the drivers. For instance, notice that when you talk about your arm, you say "my arm," implying that you are something that directs your arm's motion, not the arm itself. What are you then? If you are not your body but something that controls it, what do you look like in your true form? Consider for a moment the possibility that, as many spiritual teachers have suggested, when you really are doesn't look like anything, as you have no boundaries or limitations. What you really are is as large and enduring as the universe. When we move beyond the illusion that we are our bodies, we see that nothing remains to define the borders of what we are, nor do we feel any need for something to do so. The Vigyan Bhairav, an ancient yogic text, describes an exercise for connecting with your boundless nature at a deep level. The passage I am talking about says, "Imagine spirit simultaneously within us and around you until the entire universe spiritualizes." Exercise 5. Transcend your boundaries. I believe many of our fears, career related and otherwise, stem from a misperception of ourselves as small and weak. We see ourselves as too fragile to deal with setbacks in our businesses, confrontations with people, upcoming deadlines, and so on, and this has us hold ourselves back or worry compulsively. One way to overcome this feeling of frailty is to feel on a physical level the fact that you are much greater and stronger than you may think. What I'll recommend here will sound the most metaphysical of any exercise I have talked about so far, but if you bear with me, I think you'll be surprised at the results. We tend to assume we are our bodies. If asked to point to themselves, many people point to their chest or head and say, "This is me." When we reflect on this, we recognize that we don't think of ourselves as our bodies. We experience ourselves as the controllers of our body, as if our bodies were cars and we were the drivers. For instance, notice that when you talk about your arm, you say "my arm," implying that you are something that directs your arm's motion, not the arm itself. What are you then? If you are not your body but something that controls it, what do you look like in your true form? Consider for a moment the possibility that, as many spiritual teachers have suggested, when you really are doesn't look like anything, as you have no boundaries or limitations. What you really are is as large and enduring as the universe. When we move beyond the illusion that we are our bodies, we see that nothing remains to define the borders of what we are, nor do we feel any need for something to do so. The Vigyan Bhairav, an ancient yogic text, describes an exercise for connecting with your boundless nature at a deep level. The passage I am talking about says, "Imagine spirit simultaneously within us and around you until the entire universe spiritualizes." This exercise is intended to help dispel the notion that we are our bodies, because that belief, as spiritual teachers often say, is the source of many of our fears. The human body is in some ways frail and vulnerable. It's susceptible to disease, accidents, stress, and other kinds of injury. If we think we are nothing more than our bodies, we are bound to worry a lot. As the Indian sage Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj said, as long as you identify yourself within the body, you are vulnerable to sorrow and suffering. What this exercise let you feel is just a taste of what you really are, a being without dimensions or limitations. As you experience your real nature, you'll likely feel the fears you used to experience fading away. Those fears, after all, were based on the wrong idea that you are your body and that your body is too frail to deal with the problems that confront you in working life. In fact, you are not weak at all. You are larger than any setback or challenge you may face. In Francis People Live Healing Approaches in Quantum Psychology, psychologist Stephen Wolinsky aptly describes the importance of realizing we are greater than the obstacles that confront us in our lives. We need to have the new and different experience of discovering that we are more than or larger than the source of distress with which we are so typically identified. If I learn to move outside this misidentification so that I can view it, observe it, describe it, in short, if I am the knower of the problem, then I am bigger than it. Simply put, it is not me. The problem no longer takes up all my inner space. It is surrounded by a context of perception and awareness. Recognizing this gives you the peace and composure you need to handle the problems that arise in your career and other areas of your life.